Let's continue building the application programming interface API. So far, we have the ability to list messages. However, we do not have the ability to create one. This is what we got so far in the browser. So we can list all the messages, and all of these actually come from a database. You recall we're using Postgres. Here's my graphical user interface, GUI, Postgres, pgadmin, and I got the database here. Right click the table messages, view added data, all. And here are all the messages. So that's what we're seeing right now. The data that's in the database is now present in the front end. If you recall, we have two uh, terminal tabs, one for the back end and one for the front end. And they're running at the same time. Okay, let's go to server index. And I can close this, but it's going to be running in the background, so like hidden. And because we have nodemon decode for the server, when we make the changes, we'll automatically restart the server. So we have the function setup app where we define the endpoints here. Let's define another one. So what we do is we're going to follow the same approach. So outside here, we're going to add app. We're going to add app dot post because when you want to create a resource and you follow the REST convention, you use post to create one. And then the endpoint will be slash the resource name. So we're going to call this function post. First argument is the path. The name of the resource is messages in the plural. So I just say slash messages. Second is the function that will handle the request. And it has two parameters, request and response objects. And then here we have to read what the user sent through the request body, filter, validate user input, call on the database to create the record, send back a response with the created record, including the ID. So typically what you would do for the handler is you have to extract what the user sent from the request. So usually it's in the request body, right? The user from the client side makes a post request and includes that information in the body of the request. Then it's your role to read that, extract, and then what you're going to do is you're going to first filter out undesired properties. You just want to take what you need because there might be some users who are not in good intention. So they're including extra information that might not be relevant to the resource operation at hand, right? If you're trying to create a message and somebody tries to not only send the message text, but something else completely unrelated in hopes that that somehow is going to hack the system. So that's why you want to only isolate what you need. In this case, you want to filter out all properties except the message text. And another thing is validations. For example, has the user provided any message at all? Well, how many characters do you expect at least to have for a message? One character? What about what at most? Like for example, Twitter or X, it used to limit the characters, right? I think right now it's around 300 or something. So the user cannot type more than that. And all those other validations as needed. And after you pass the validation, you would call the database to create a record. And finally, you get an ID that identifies the row, and then you send that back to the user. Usually, you send the full object, including the message again back to the user. It's like echoing, but with the ID included. Something I didn't mention is in a actual system, you're going to have authentication and authorization, meaning when a message from the client comes in, a request, you're going to first check, okay, is this user authenticated into the system? That is, do you have an account with the system? Because usually we need require somebody to register before actually creating a message. And the other part is, are you authorized to do that operation? Maybe you're trying to comment on something, a protected resource, and that is not allowed. So you have to check those. Typically, those two are handled using what we call middleware, which is something that's put in between the request and the actual response handler. So by the time I reach this handler here, I will have checked if the user is authenticated and if the user is authorized to do this operation. So we can assume that, okay, since we don't have it, we're going to make the assumption that is the case. Anyway, how can we read the body? Well, we got to take it from the request body, and that might involve some stuff. So usually we use middleware as well to extract that for us automatically for every request. And there's already a built-in into Express called the JSON middleware. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go before we do all the handlers, right after we connect to the database, and we're gonna add the middleware. So to use a middleware, you say app.use and you pass a function here. Now I'm gonna explain to you in simple terms what a middleware is. It's just a function, okay, that takes a request, response, and a next. Now the middleware is gonna be intercepting the requests that come in. So when you get a request, it's going to call this function here. And then you're going to do whatever you need to do. In this case, it's going to extract the body, but I'm just explaining to you what the middleware is. So after you do your operation, do some processing, you have to let the request go through if that is the case. So if you want it to go through, you call next like that. Okay. So this is how you'd build your own middleware. If you need to check for authentication, here is before the next, you would check, okay, let's see if the user exists in our database. Is he authenticated and so on and so on. If that is the case, I'm going to call next and let him through. Otherwise, I just block, send back a request, return res.send with some error or whatever. Okay, so that's a middleware. Now, we don't have to write from scratch the middleware to extract the body of the request. We can just call the express.json middleware like this. Okay, so when you call this one, it returns back a function to you. And that function is the definition for the middleware that will be in charge of every time a request comes in, it will extract from the body and turn that into a JavaScript object notation. You can actually see the source code for this thing here. If you go here and look at, this is the type actually. Let me look at the node modules directory, express, lib, and this one, I think we can search here for JSON. And you can read this line, express, that call to JSON is actually from body parser, this thing here. And that comes from this other module. So we would have to go to node module slash body parser and index. And this is actually where that JSON is defined. You would find JSON here somewhere. And I think it's this one. Anyway, you can go on and on finding out what the code looks like. I just wanted to show you that's just returning a function. I think this one, if you export JSON. Anyway, going back to where we were. So this will return that middleware function. So every time we get a request, it will extract. So is it extracted to? It's extracted to rec.body. So it sets the property req.body. So when you go back to the handler for the post messages, we can just say rec.body whatever property was specified in the form. Remember the form, the controls for the input, they have a name property. So this is what will appear here. So if you had the name set to message, you would just call message. Anyway, so if you recall, let's go to the back to the front end to see what we are sending, if we're sending anything at all. Components, messages. So when we add a message here, so we're calling the fake backend and we're sending the body with the title like this. Okay. So we want to change this. So first, we're not going to call the fake backend. We're going to delete that. We're going to call our own that we just wrote with Express. So HTTP, no S, okay, no S, colon, slash, slash, localhost, colon 2001, slash messages. Now this is in the front end and it's already including these options to make it a post request and it's including the title here. So when we go back to the backend, we're gonna read rec.body.title. Okay, so let me save that. Go back to the backend server slash index. And to access the title is just this. Okay. Now, to filter out properties, typically we would, if we had more than one, so right now it's very simple. So maybe you could do like make a function that will call on the body to filter, like for example, I can make a function here. Let me put it outside. Function filter properties of a request body. Then you would do the filtering. And here we can do a very simple one. Just return the object with title is request body.title. If you had more, you have to write it down, or you can make like a for loop to kind of eliminate or filter out what you don't need. Anyway, with that function, you can call that here. So filter properties with the request body. So basically you give the request.body, which will be that object of the title property. And then the filter properties functions is in charge of filtering out any undesired properties. And that's doing so by simply returning a new object with the title property extracted from the body. So this way, if you had like extra properties in rec.body, they would be taken out and you just get back this filtered one. So you can call that, let's call it message body, storing a variable. And yeah, so this we did both at the same time. Now we're going to call the database to create a record. But actually we could also validate, right? Do you want to validate the title? Let's do this one here separately. Maybe you want to check, okay, the message body dot title. Do we have a title? So if we don't have a title, that is maybe this is not defined, so you can use the exclamation there, which means this value here, uh, if it's like not defined, like undefined or null, it will flip to true because of the exclamation mark. That's the not operator. And the body of the if will execute. And here we would send back a response. For example, return res. And then if you want to change the status code, status maybe 422, and then you would send an object of an error property, maybe title is missing, something like that. So dot status will set the response status code to 422. I think that's unprocessable entity. And then if you send like this, it's basically the same as using JSON. If you want to use that as well. And observe, I put return here because I don't want any code after the if block to be executed. So that's important. So this will take care of the title not being provided or being empty. If you want to add more validations, you would follow the same principle here. Maybe you want to also check if there's a limit, maybe if the message body dot title, in this case, because this one passed and I'm here in line 44, I assume message body dot title already is defined and it's non-zero length. So I'm safe to do message dot title dot length. For example, if I don't want it, if it's greater than 300 characters, then I'm gonna send it's two, we have a limit, right? I'm gonna send here JSON error. Title should not be more than 300 characters. Something like that. And you can keep going on and on and on. And actually can be extracted into its own function. In the same way we had a function to filter the properties, you could go here, maybe you can make a function to validate properties, something like that. Body. And then you would do your stuff here. Maybe you want to return back an error. Check if it's valid. Maybe you could do like you can make an object of errors or an array. It depends. If you do array, you would basically do, for example, if the body not title, you would return. It's up to you if you want to return. There are different ways to approach error. You could accumulate them all, or you can just return the very first one that you see back to the user so he can fix that and then he gets the next error and so on. Or you could send them all at once. If you do one by one, you don't even need the array of errors here. You would just return like the message here, for example, title is missing. You could do that. And then you don't need this. I'm just commented out. You can also accumulate all errors instead of returning one by one or one at a time. And then you would add the other one. Let me do that. Can call body. I have to change it because I changed the name here, but you could change the message body if you don't want to change. But this one, we just return that. So this way, if you don't have an error, you could return like either empty string or null or undefined, something like that. So that way, to use that, you would call here. So error validation errors equals validate properties of the message body. So you call the function, and then you're going to check if there is validation errors. That means that is defined. You're going to do return res status with the error being the actual validation error. Actually, it just should be singular, right? Because I only have one. And then you can do that. You isolate into the function here. So if there's no error at all, it's going to return no. And when you return no, this will be a falsy value, which turns to false, and the body of the if statement is not executed. Therefore, it's going to continue to the next lines. Okay, so after that, we call on the database to create a record. But before we do that, let's just test everything so far to see if it's working, okay? I'm gonna just return a res.send here with OK 200 just so we can test it out. So let's go here in the browser. So you can press F12, open the network tab. Let's monitor write message. So we got a problem here. And that's the cross-origin request blocked because the domain, the client, doesn't match the same as the server, and the browser by default is same origin policy, doesn't allow that. So it's that same story. We have to add the header, access control allow origin. So you would have to go here. And for this one, basically set the same thing you did line 44 here. Basically that. So before I send a request, I do that. Going back here and trying again. Let's see if I saved. One moment. I think there's a cache. Maybe there's a cache. Let me see. See the request. Headers. Response headers not being included here. But if I do refresh and see the messages, I see it here. So why is it not including it? Let's see. We changed the front end to go to our backend fake, right? So I verify that. It's actually doing a request to localhost 3001. Let me see what's going on in the backend. Let me restart. But it shouldn't be the problem. I saved it, right? Okay. Let's see. It's not including here. Oh, because of the validation. This is not being reached. I think that's the issue. If we move this back up, let's see. No. Let's see what's going on. Okay, let's do some logging here to see what's going on. A easy way to debug is just console log /messages here. And we should see this message when I go back and try again. So it's not calling that. So why is that not calling that? It should have been logged. Okay, something is strange going on here. Let me remove the middleware. refresh, write. We're making post. And it's not logging. Did we call it messages? Let's see. We called it messages HTTP. Okay, let me open Postman here. So there's this program that we can use to debug uh, make HTTP requests, and it's easier to work with. One of them is Postman, but you can also use Insomnia, this one as well. So it's up to you. I like Postman. Anyway, I'm gonna open my Postman here. One moment. So you don't have to sign in for Postman. You can click skip there if you install for the first time. And then click I'm gonna plus the plus, and you can change my requests here to post HTTP colon slash slash localhost 3001 slash messages. And I can see, oh, now I see what's going on. Cannot read properties of undefined. That filter properties line. You can see here line 16 of index.js. So let's go back. Now it's showing post messages. I don't know why in the client it didn't make the request because of CORS, even though I put access control. It's probably because of this exception. Didn't make it possible to set the header. Anyway, let's see, line 16. It's saying reading title of undefined. So this is undefined. So whoever's calling filter properties is calling with undefined here. So it looks like my rec.body is not being uh, parsed. Why is that the case? Let's check the middleware. I think I comment it out, so I should uncomment that and then try again. Now I'm gonna click send. Now I should get this title is missing, which is correct because I didn't include anything. Now the front end doing that is very strange because I can see here headers and it's here access control allow origin. And if I go back to the front end, something strange is happening. Let me try Chrome. Open network. I disable cache, by the way. I click this. I'm gonna refresh. Fail to fetch. Okay. From origin has been blocked. Let me go here. Response headers. I don't know why this is not including allow any Postman it is, but let me just kind of fast track and use the CORS middleware instead of setting it myself. There's also middleware for CORS that you can put so it can does everything for us automatically. So we don't have to be doing it ourselves here. So I'm gonna remove his and remove also from this one here. And I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna app.use and it's called CORS. So you can call it like this and you have to install it. So Let me kill the server. Control C, npm install cors. So when you call cores like this, it basically it returns a function with that signature of recres next. So I can go up here, cores, require cores. And that should work off the bat. And I think it's going to be by default allowing everything if I am not mistaken. Let's see. Let me restart my server, npm run dev. Then I'm going to go to Postman and test it out. And try again. So I see star there. It allows any origin. So we're going to go to Chrome, refresh. I don't really need to refresh, I think, because it's only backend change. No, it's doing its job. I have some breakpoints here. I'll remove all and click play. So if you click back to networks, now it's making the request here. And you can see the response setters include access control allow origin. And now it's working. Anyway, let's go back to VS Code. You can see the console logs are now being executed and there's no problem in the response. So if once you're done console log, you can remove it. Okay, let's test these validations. So we got the filter properties here. You can test that. Let me show you a way you can debug this without the console log. So you're gonna kill the server. You're gonna run with node dash dash inspect dash vrk space and then index.js. So you need to call node with this option and it will pretty much wait for you. Then I'm going to VS Code. This is a debugger for Visual Studio Code, by the way. You can put breakpoints here. For example, I'm interested in seeing what message body is after doing the filter property. So I can click here, the line afterwards. See that breakpoint. And I'm just going to let it through. So what I have to do is attach to the node process. So I would go to view command palette or control shift P and attach to node process. And then I choose the one that's running and it's make sure it's this one. And now it's pretty much server running there. So you have to make a request. So we go to Postman. I'm going to test the request without anything, right? So if I do that, I go back to Visual Studio Code. I'm now stopped in the breakpoint line 55. And I can hover over message body to see there's no title. It's undefined, right? So it's returning an object with title undefined. And then if I go to the next line, which is F10 or pressing this icon here, it will also get the validation error title is missing from this function call. So yeah, you can just let it play and it will return back a response. Okay, and then I can try again, going back to Postman. I'll go to body if I want to include anything, and I can, let me scroll all the way up here. There's no room here. Raw, JSON, make a JSON object, put a title there. Let's say hello world, and then I'm gonna add other properties. This isn't relevant. 1, 2, 3, another. I need quotes because JSON. Hello. So these have nothing to do with creating the message. So I'm gonna send. Then I'm gonna go back to the Visual Studio Code, and I can see it's paused in the breakpoint. Let's look at rec.body. This is rec.body if you hover over it. You can also go to the debug console and press rec.body here, enter. It will return to you that. So as you can see, this is what we received in the server side. So if you look at message body, it filtered out the other properties and only leaves the title, hello world there, which is what we want. Now we're safe to only leverage that when we insert it to the database. So if I go to the next line with F10, there's no validation error, right? No. And you can continue. You can also test the title length. If you want to do that, you can do that as well. I'm going to kill the debugger by disconnecting and going back to the terminal, Control C, and just let it run npm run dev again like normal. And we can test the other one easily by going here. I can copy this many times, 300, right? So let's do that. We can do this 300 times, or you can go to something like you can write, for example, Python, you can type character A times 300, and it'll print 300 times. Anyway, let's go here and change it. That might be enough. 422. And body is title should not be more than 300 characters. Okay, so that's testing and debugging. Now let's get back to actually doing the database stuff. So we got everything filtered out, validated. Now it's time to call the database. So we're gonna hide this for now and just do the same process we did in the get. You're gonna call on the PG client. So hey, PG client, let me dot query. And the query, if you recall from SQL, is insert into table name messages. And then we have to specify all the column names here. And then the values here. Let's refresh your memory about the table. Going back to PG admin, let's expand messages, and you can see expand columns. We have ID, body, user ID created at, updated at. Okay, let's go here. So we got body, user ID, created at, updated at. So those are the columns. We don't need to specify ID because that's auto incremented and we're taken care of. Now, when you do the values here, you would put them here, right? A, B, C, and so on. But we don't do this when we write code because this would expose us to what's called SQL injection problem security, in which if the user provided a title that had a SQL query, for example, if you were to write it here, the user provide like title, literally they would say like this. Let's say they would put some fake value like hello, then comma, the user ID, and then some date, and then another date. And then they would close it and they would do something malicious like delete from messages. So if the title is this, right, and you take that, copy, right, this into here, you would close the insert and then delete or do something malicious, which is undesirable. This is very dangerous stuff. So it's called a SQL injection. So to avoid that, you don't want to do that. You want to actually do placeholders with question marks here. And then as a second argument to query, you pass an array of all those values in order. So the first one is the body, which will be message body dot title, right? We call body the title. It's kind of weird, but we could change it later, but it's okay. That's what we got. The second one is the date. I think we can do a new date like this. Let's try. This is basically creating a new date object, and you can copy the same for updated at. And I put user ID actually before the date. You don't have a user right now, so we can do like, let's do current user dot ID and create a fake user. We don't have off right now, but let's create a fake user. So you could create a variable called current user. That's an object that has an ID, for example, 1. That's like the fake user with ID 1. And then you can use it here. And this query returns a promise. Okay, so you would have to use the dot then like we did before. However, I want to show you a different way of handling that with async await. So instead of doing that, I'm going to do await that. And then this await, what it does, it will not go to the next line until this promise is fulfilled, and it will take the value and return here. And we can return that, put in a variable called the result. Now to use await, I need to make the function that wraps that statement async. So I would go here and add async keyword. Okay. The difference between this and the promise is when you have promises, handling with then, everything outside here and there are actually run. So this is called, and at the same time, it keeps going to here and there. And the then will only be called once this operation for this specific one is done, but still the other lines are run. So that's the difference here. This line is not run until the promise is fulfilled. Okay, we got the result there. So typically this query doesn't return back the object, basically the row that was created, including the ID. So you want to add to the end this returning star. So basically returning all the column names. That way the result will be a list of rows. So we can do, if you access result.rows, and the first one will be the created one, and then you can send that back to the user here. So you would send that. But mind you, this result, the database tables, the naming might be not be the same as the one you're expecting, because usually database columns in your case, they're named with the underscore case, right? If you recall. But usually in JavaScript, we use camel case. So if you want, you could convert it here before sending it. You could make like an adaptive function to convert from snake to camel case, or you could also use SQL alias as in your query. That's also possible. But anyway, you can make like a created message equals, you would say title, and then you would say result rows sub-zero dot body, right? Because we don't call it title, we call it body. So this will be like the adapter. Because if the front end is expecting title, you have to send that back. And then you send back create a message. This also can be isolated to a separate function if you want. I just did it inline. So a lot of the things here we're doing kind of manual, but you can always better organize it, make it less repetitive in a way. Okay, let's try it out. Finally, we're gonna move this here. Let's try Postman first, because it's easy one. So I'm gonna make this message hello world 1 through 3, send it, and then what happened? Oh, we got an issue. Let's see what it is. Open the terminal again. We crashed. Oh, I deleted the whole query. How did I do that? Let me backtrack here. And I'll redo everything. I did not mean to remove the whole query. Now I'm gonna make it all over again. And this part, I want to copy it back. Okay, I didn't mean for that to be removed. Okay, let's try again. It restarted the server. And we're gonna go to Postman. Try again. More errors. Let's try again. What's the other one? Syntax error, index 66. So I made a syntax error. So we got the query, insert into messages, values, returning, got 4 question marks. Got that. Let's see. Let's try maybe if I had ID and put default here. Would it work? I don't think that shouldn't be a problem. I don't think I need semicolon, but let's try in this case. Okay, same problem. Okay, so we got to do how we get around this. I don't know what's going on. So I'm going to backtrack. So I'm going to comment this out and ignore this. I'm going to comment this out and ignore it. I'm going to comment the PG query ignore. So I'm going to send back a reply here. Return res.send, okay. And that should work. Okay, I got 200, okay. Nice. Now going back, let's move this down here. So I'm going to make the query. So that seems to be insert into messages, ID body, whatever. Let's just do a query with select. Select star from messages. Does that work? And then I'll just remove this temporarily, but I'll revert that back. Okay, that seems to work. So I'm going back, revert. So we got the ID, we got body, read it out, updated that. The column names are correct, right? If I read PG admin again, ID body user underscore ID, read it out, updated that. Yes. And messages is the table name. We got message body here. We got current user, new date, new date. And that's the crash. Okay. Insert into messages. I mean, remove returning. Okay, not that. Let me remove this whole thing. And what happens if I do this? Okay, still not. Okay. Let's debug with the dev tools again. Control X, node, inspect, BRK, index.js, attach to node process, make the request, go back here. Okay, let's see message body. Yeah, I have a title, current user, ID. I can do new date, right? If I go here debug console, that works. And yeah, insert into messages ID, got body user underscore ID created at, updated at. Oh, I'm missing the, I'm not. Thought I was missing the closing parentheses. Values. I got default question mark. Oh, okay. You got to use $1 here, $2, $3, and $4. It's not question mark in PG. That's why it's not working. So the placeholders has to be ordered by number. Okay, let's try. How did I know that? I was reading the docs. Let me show you. npmjs.com. We use the PG. And here you have the documentation. And if you scroll down, you see there's using dollar here. Dollar. And then you can read about the placeholder. Think if you call query here. Call somewhere queries here. See values $1, $2. Usually other frameworks is question mark. That's why I got confused. Anyway, let's go back. Now we're done with that. Remove breakpoints, play, go back to terminal, close this, vmrm dev. I think that should fix it. Go to Postman, try again. I got okay. So I think it was created. Let's remove this. Go revert this back, send this back. And I should see it in pgadmin after 10 here. Play. Hello world 123. So if you do this from the website, let me go to Chrome. I can see hello world 123 there. A new message. Right. Let's see the dev tools, what happened here. Let's look at how it crashed. Oh no, it crashed. 72 is the line. You can read it in the console here. Something happened here because an input returning. If there's no returning, it doesn't return back the data that was created. So you have to have like return star. Save that. Let's try again. Trash this. Write message. There you go. Now it worked. I think from the network, we got back the title with a new message. Although it didn't work here because if you refresh, it should be there, but I think it didn't work because the property name is wrong. So if I go back to the front end, what is it expecting when you create a new message here? By the way, we are add message. We make the request, and then extract the response, set the new message with created post, which comes with title, right? But I think it's using body here. Yeah, so we're all over the place. We use title in here, but we use body in the other thing. So we should change this. Let's change it to body, which is the correct one to match with the database. And then going back to the backend, we change it instead of title, you want to make that body. So filter properties, change it to body. and the request body to body, and this to body, body.body, and change all that stuff. And you control F to search more title stuff. So this should be body. So everything you see title, you have to say body now. Okay, I don't find any more title when I do control F to search here. Enter, nothing else. Save that. Let's try again. So let's go. Refresh. Hi there. And it's here. And if I look at the database and I click play again, should be the last one. It's there. So it's working fine.